support for a national priority, which is winning the AI race against China, access to all the markets that this product that everyone on Earth will want, as well as the military applications,
Sure.
faster decision making time, real time targeting information, advanced animatronic and automated devices, that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, you have these Democrats and Republicans both saying, moratoriums on the building of these data centers as an expression of the hostility that the public has towards AI. And yet, if you look at their actual proposals, they're very porous. They're not really moratoriums.
Right.
As we understand them, they're just regulatory environments. Indeed, regulatory environments that data center builders will probably easily navigate. They just want to be able to say, I'm as skeptical as you are, but it's all a moral panic. And it's really depressing for me.
It's really dangerous, quite frankly, because as I keep telling people, the future is controlled by whoever has the most compute. That's it. Like, it's us or China, and it has to be us because China's version of it is kind of terrifying.
And every single player in this industry, as well as media experts and researchers and think tanks and those who testify before Congress, a lot of actors with very disparate, sometimes conflicting motives, all saying this is a Chinese digital information warfare operation and that it's working. And some of this
Yeah.
stuff is just nutty. The notion that like these things arrest the water cycle and
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
abrogate the laws of the conservation of matter, as though these molecules will not reconvene in the atmosphere as they always have. I mean, this is the sort of thing that they vibrate and raise cortisol levels. Some lady said this on CNN without objection. I mean, some of this stuff is just batty. A lot of people think that they raise your power rates, which is also not true.
Right.
These things
Actually,
pay. I'm sorry, just
if,
briefly.
if you
These
have
things
a
pay
well
market
run,
rates, wholesale rates, and we need more power generation in this country. That's what we should be talking about. How our
yes.
our on-demand power generation is not meeting our needs. It's not data centers. It's everything.
Well, and if you have a data center located in a strong transmission corridor, it actually helps reduce prices under the utility model for other customers.
People are so hostile to that. They are so hostile to that. And that's the other thing is that you can fact check this all you want, but if the
Yes.
public isn't listening, and they're not listening, then you're just not going to reach them. So now people are like finding metaphysical explanations
Correct.
for
Cor
for why people don't like data centers. They're a big metaphor for the imperious tech sector and really reckless statements by AI people who are saying like, yeah, this product is going to render you redundant. Like
I
maybe they actually believe them. All that stuff is kind of insightful and interesting, but you're just trying to grapple with the irrationality of it all.
I actually was able to review a draft for a poll the Rainey Center's coming in on doing on AI this week and the data centers. And the thing I really pushed them, which they're doing, is saying, okay, where are you actually getting your information on data centers? And then I asked them, do you actually know anybody that lives by a data center or who's gone to a county commission meeting to oppose a data center? I'm really interested where people are getting this information because all of a sudden they're science. The great thing about social media, everybody becomes an expert. So now everybody who couldn't
Yeah.
pass high school science is now an expert on what data centers are going to do to our health. And, it's, we just, and then I saw the poll that more people are opposed to a data center next to them than a nuclear plant. I mean, it has
Which is just that's what they tell people though,
I
right?
know,
Like,
it's insanity, and so
is that
where do they find I really wanna know, how are you hearing about this? Because I am guessing if I went out to you, you came out to me, and we walked on 20 doors this week and asked where they hear about data centers, they wouldn't know. It's just
yeah.
they're bad, that's all I know.
But yeah, but somebody who says, "I would rather live next to a nuclear reactor than a data center," I don't believe you. I
Right,
think
I
that's
agree.
something you want to tell pollsters that you think you're
Yes.
supposed to believe,
Yes,
but you
yes.
don't really believe it. David Marcus over at Fox News, he lives in West Virginia. He's an insightful guy. And he talks to people, and he has this
Right.
very interesting column on Fox News today about West Virginians and their thoughts about data centers. West Virginia, by the way, is toying with eliminating their income tax
Yes.
based on the revenue they're generating from data centers. So you can't say that there's no community value to this. But what are those people saying? They're saying that we have concerns about land use, we have concerns about zoning and property rights, and all that's very valuable. But what they said specifically is that this is not a problem of privation and want. This is not the economic problem that we think everybody's dealing with, affordability, right? What they say is that the problem here is growth. Growth is too rapid. Growth is too in our face. Growth is affecting everything around us. And even though it's lifting all boats, it's changing our way of life in ways that are too rapid for our pleasure. That's a
I
very different problem
I
than the one we're
agree.
grappling with.
I agree with that. I think that's a really good point. I think people are just uneasy right now, and I get it. You know, we talk about when we do our show, we have points we want to talk about with our guests, and then we wake up and Donald Trump woke up 3 hours before, and the whole world's changed overnight. And I think this constant rapid transformation, the changes, the hatred, the division, I think it's just scaring people, and they sort of just say, I need a timeout. I need a recess here." I think that's a lot of it too, as well.
Yeah, very well could be. It very well could be. But at the same time, and while I understand politicians have to flatter the sensibilities of those who are wrong, I don't.
Correct.
I don't have to. That's not my
Well,
job. My job is to tell you what I believe I'm
Right.
seeing, I'm looking at, and my interpretation of it, and not to flatter your pretensions and avoid offending you by telling you that what you heard or what you believe or what you think is right is not right. Like that's just my vocation in it.
well, we're not gonna be handing out many profiles of courage, especially when we have a $40 trillion national debt, and they all know it's bad, but no one's gonna do anything about it. Let me ask you the next thing. Let's talk about Iran. So Trump has a strategy, Strait of Hormuz. Do you think it's working? What would you tell describe our audience what's happening and why you think it may work?
Yeah, well, so if you haven't been paying much attention to, and I completely understand why, because this thing has been pretty static for a while. But
Right.
there's been a lot of movement over the last month. A month ago, almost no traffic, maritime commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz was flowing through the U.S. maintained channel that hugs the Omani coast. What the Iranians want is for all this traffic to travel through its channel near the Iranian coast, which it will subsequently toll at a time and place of its choosing. According to CNN's analysis this week, today about 80% of the vessels that have made it through the strait are taking the US authorized lane. There have been, according to even Iran's official statistics, it is exporting zero crude oil or refined petroleum products through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's a big shift. It suggests, A, that the United States can maintain this embargo for the indefinite future and throttle the Iranian economy, which is experiencing profound challenges. According to Energy Secretary Chris Wright, about 15 million barrels a day are flowing through the strait. Now, whether that's maritime traffic or whether that's in concert with the overland pipelines that are redirecting oil and refined products away from the strait, I don't know. But it's approaching the 20 million barrels per day. That was the pre war average of traffic out of the strait, which will have put downward pressure on global energy markets. And meanwhile, the conditions in Iran are deteriorating rapidly. 90% inflation, there's gas rationing, there's gas lines, they're instituting hours long planned blackouts in order to triage their resources. And the IRGC is cracking down once again on the public. They're ramping up executions, cracking down on dissidents, closing cafes, which is where some of the organizers of the protests in December and January emerged from. So that the regime is feeling the pressure and the fear that the Wall Street Journal reported this month or this week rather, is that as this condition metastasizes and Iran becomes increasingly isolated, it could lash out, and it could lash out in the form of widening the war. One specific way is to execute ground operations in neighboring territories, neighboring states, like Kuwait. It could try to send a boarding party through that little strip of land over Iraq that separates Iran and Kuwait, and try to get into Kuwait and take or hold some territory, or at least, do some damage. And that would really scramble the calculation in the region and for the United States. And we should be prepared for it because Iran is not going to sit down and just accept its economic throttling indefinitely. It will try to change the conditions on the ground and recapture the momentum.
It absolutely will. I do have kind of a tangential question on that because I'm not sure how familiar you are with the drought conditions in Iran right now, which is just they have a massive drought. Tehran is essentially unsustainable. Many of their villages and outer, small cities are essentially out of water. That is going to take international cooperation to help them fix, and specifically, it would take the Israelis. Is there some way that Trump or the administration can or should be leveraging things like that also?
Well, yeah, how they would leverage it, I'm not exactly sure. But this is not a new problem. Before the war, there were pronounced water shortages inside Iran owing to environmental factors as well as utter mismanagement and the misuse of its resources inside the country. But they were flirting with abandoning Tehran, the capital of Iran.
Right.
Go look it up. They were saying we're going to have to leave this city fallow and just relocate every person in it because it's not sustainable for human life anymore. Obviously, subsequent events have frustrated that plan, such as it was, if it was a plan. But
Right.
the water problems haven't abated, and yeah, they're having to do some really serious triaging of resources. The hardships for the average Iranian are really hard to articulate.
yes.
It is an impossible life inside this country, and it cannot be sustained. The IRGC
No.
is absolutely right to be terrified of its people, their primary enemy. They're not going to sit and take this forever. Something has to give. Hopefully, it's not the president, and it very well could be. We don't know how much stomach he has for a very long campaign like this, and it's going to take months. This is not a weeks-long situation. This is going to persist for months.
And we have just about 30 seconds left before we go to the next segment, but that's a really critical point to expand on, at least for a moment. If Trump backs down, we'll never have the opportunity to get rid of that regime again.
Oh, he can't back down now. I mean,
yeah, I don't think he backs down at all. I think he's in. I don't think he even cares about the midterms regarding that. I think he's in. I think he's looking at legacy stuff. I really think he views Venezuela, Iran as legacy stuff.
Yeah, and I can't. I find it hard to even think about the repercussions of if he were to abandon these conditions now, because the U.S. is the guarantor of free maritime navigation of the seas. After the British did that for about 200 years, they handed it off to us in 1945, and we've been managing that obligation ever since. And Americans take for granted how much we benefit from
just
that.
a moment, folks. Stay tuned. Breaking Battlegrounds back in a second.
Ready whenever you are, Jeremy.
You want to hit on the Mamdani thing and the Darlene Graham? It's sort of tied together. Like neither does their homework.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sure.
All right, here we go. Segment 2, 9 minutes.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're continuing on now with Noah Rothman, senior writer at National Review. You can follow him on X at Noah C. Rothman, and definitely check out his books. His latest book, Blood and Progress, A Century of Left-Wing Violence, is available on Amazon and wherever you like to get your books. I like bookstores still. I don't know about you, but, you know.
Noah, how many books do you read a month?
A month? No books. I don't read a book a month. I wish I could read a book a month. I don't even read for fun. I don't have the opportunity to read for fun anymore. I do read books, but it's for work.
Yeah, I do too. Do you find that frustrating? I find it frustrating. Do you find it frustrating?
I mean, I suppose, but also my reading habits are so narrow. I read nonfiction exclusively. I read stuff that I would read for work exclusively. So there's not a lot. There's overlap there significantly. But sometimes, usually, I'm reading something that has a very specific application for my job.
But if you go on vacation, do you take a book for fun, or is it just all still work stuff?
Oh yeah, no, I take a book for fun, but it's a nonfiction book about a subject in an area of history or intellectual history or something like that. That's where I get my entertainment.
I save the last 30 minutes of my night for historical fiction just to get my mind off of everything before I go to sleep.
That's great. That's great. I struggle with fiction. I have to force myself into it, and when I do, I enjoy it very much. But otherwise, part of me is just like, well, the actual story is better.
Yeah, they're way more important and way better. I totally agree. The problem is, in our business, do you ever get to put it down?
No.
Like, that's the trick. How do you put it down? How do you put this work we all do down?
Yeah,
right.
Like, interesting. Let's talk about New York's bodega bailout. Explain to our audience what's happening. It's not top news for a lot of people, but it's interesting for Mr. Socialist Mamdani to push this, and now he's bailing out the privately run bodegas.
Yeah, well, so Zoran Mamdani, New York City's mayor, has a obsession with his city-run grocery store idea. The assumption being that there's quote-unquote food deserts out there, and they need to be remedied through the state. The state will create grocery stores, and it will offer products at subsidized prices, and it will alleviate the pressure on families who just can't get access to food. And it's illustrative. It's funny because this is a $70 million project to create 5. That's right, 5 grocery stores, and one of them they're taking bids from contractors, and they were touring an empty lot in East Harlem. And one of the reporters who was on this tour, touring this food desert, walked about 2 blocks east and found a bodega owner who really resents the competition that he's about to face, and should.
Yeah.
These grocery stores are going to offer select products at a 30% discount, by which they mean taxpayers will subsidize it. That's going to create competition that those who operate within market dynamics cannot meet. They'll go under, but that subsidization doesn't last forever. So when the subsidized groceries are withdrawn, you have these substandard products in these stores and no competition elsewhere because these stores have eliminated the competition. That is the story of subsidized food products, subsidized grocers throughout time immemorial. This is not a new experiment. So all these guys have been complaining. Well, they're taking the mayor to court, by the way, over this, some of them. So what does the mayor do? He comes out and he produces a small budget grants, 8.4 million of small block grants for small businesses, including bodegas. The bodegas owners are getting a bailout preemptively so that they'll just shut up with their objections to this unfair competition from the state. It is they just erect scaffolding to try to keep the rotten foundation from collapsing out from under them. But it's the foundation that's the problem. It's not the implementation.
Right.
The idea was a bad one to begin with.
Well, the other problem, though, is that they're running out of other people's money. I mean, they're just out. They are going above and beyond to find new ways to implement taxes. I think it was Seattle yesterday announced that they are doubling garbage fees so they can fill potholes. I don't know what garbage and potholes are connected, but they have no more avenues to raise this money. People are fleeing. So how do they keep paying?
Yeah. How does New York City struggle along with a budget that is the size of the state of Florida's?
Right.
You can't make it work, guys. It is remarkable. And it has everything to do with the misallocation of capital, owing in large measure to the arrangements that the city has made over generations with politically connected constituent groups. They're just funneling taxpayer cash into the pockets of the well-connected and have been for generations. And then they dare to argue about affordability with us and how we just aren't allocating our capital in the right ways. It's really grating.
Yeah, I was watching a series on the mafia, the origins of the mafia on Netflix this past week. And it's the government there is no different than the mafia. They're just paying off constituents, so they do what they want them to do. It's no difference. It's the same system. They just do it under the government umbrella.
I actually think there is a difference. The mafia used to get things done.
Yeah, that's true. You talk to any old-time Las Vegas person, they said it was safer when the mafia.
Oh yeah, no, they got it done.
I mean, anybody in Vegas who was there during the mafia.
It was the same in Boston, growing up there in the 70s, 80s, where the mafia, you had the Irish and the Italians, each had their portion of town. There was like no random violence.
No, it's very true. Go ahead.
I just don't know. I wouldn't romanticize the 1980s in New York City.
But it's just
lack of random violence.
No, remember, I was in Boston, not New York City, so different environment there. Then we did the Big Dig, and all the mobsters got rich and left, and random violence exploded.
Darlene Graham, I was really surprised she gave this response in the debate. Can you tell us about it?
In part because it was one of the worst debate answers I've ever heard.
Yeah, especially knowing who her brother was, right? That's what he's known for.
Yeah, that's the other thing. When Lindsey Graham was not navigating a confirmation fight as the head of the Judiciary Committee, ranking member or chairman, he was talking about foreign policy. It's all he ever talked about. So I asked, did she not pick any of this stuff up by osmosis, just sitting around the table with the guy? For listeners who may not know, Senator Darlene Graham, the appointed senator who replaced Lindsey Graham after his untimely death, was in a debate with her opponent, Ralph Norman. She was asked a very simple question about Taiwan. How does Taiwan relate to American national security? You can go anywhere with that. You could talk about trade relations, our military posture, alliance dynamics, you name it. But what does she say? She says, I'm just going to be honest here. I'm not that informed on national security, but I do support the military. Just paper over all that. You couldn't be bothered to even you know, just look at a briefing book, or just like
Like,
skim it.
everyone comes
Well,
up with 2 sentences for that. I
so
mean, come on.
so yeah, so I
You
have
can
some real
fake it. Anybody here can fake it for 2
well,
minutes.
I just when I heard about it, I just know his team grown up because I was close to the Lindsay folks. I did their 212 campaign when the Tea Party went after him. They called me 2 weeks ago to contribute to her, which I did. I mean, it's sort of this, Lindsay built this family type thing, right? And when that answer came, I just know they all groaned. I mean, because
Yeah.
she has this team running it. It's just like that's the one question you have to answer, being Senator Graham's replacement.
Well, some people thought it was refreshingly honest. Like, I'd much rather hear senators say they don't know about something than
Sure.
filibuster their way through a subject and make no sense about it. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, if she was going to answer that in a way that would make her look even more unprepared, maybe she took the path of least resistance here, at least the least pain. But that's not an explanation. It's not a defense of her conduct. It's actually a further indictment. If she really has that little understanding, comprehension of what is essentially the scariest flashpoint on the planet Earth, that a high school senior should be expected to rattle off what our national interests are in the Western Pacific. I struggle to see the rationale for supporting that candidacy beyond the fact that she's Lindsey Graham's brother, which does nothing for me, or sister rather, which does nothing for me.
Yeah, politicians who know nothing about the actual world, whether it's Mamdani or any other, are dangerous. It's
Yes.
just too much. Noah Rothman, thank you so much for joining us once again. Folks, follow him on X at Noah C. Rothman, and make sure you're grabbing his book, Blood and Progress, The Century of Left-Wing Violence. It's available now. Breaking Bad is coming back.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks very much,
Appreciate it.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
I appreciate
Talk to
it.
you
Take
soon.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
When we do these sheets with authors, let's just put their latest book on there.
Just tell Aaron. Just when they do the most recent book.
Because some of them, if they have a whole bundle of them, it's like you start listing it and they're like, I wrote that 5 years ago.
Well, we've done that a couple times, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, and it makes it shorter.
Yeah.
Just so you know, it is still live on YouTube.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know.
That's okay. People are gonna have to. People are gonna get some sausage making out there.
No,
That's what it is. I just it's a little weird. When his old book was first, I always do that, and then I feel bad because I realize I just listed his old book first.
All right, let's do Brennan. Let's go. Woo!
We'll put your video on too.
It's on. I did it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Murder, mystery, secrets untold. The truth gets set free when B gets a hold. Crimes where killers roam off free, or even ones where they get caught at the scene. From cold case files to headline news, she's breaking it all down just for you. So come take a seat, don't miss a beat. These crime corners where the stories go deep.
Okay, so Pablo Escobar would be really proud about this one. This is the Pablo Pledge-Escobar case that just happened in Penn State, the cocaine ring. This has been going on from 2023 to 2024.
Has it been going that long?
Uh-huh.
Same crew?
Yep. So it was tied to Sigma Chi and Delta Epsilon. They both are no longer affiliated with the university. Delta Epsilon was actually already not affiliated with the university. So they had been involved for a while, but not with Penn State. So 14 were charged, 13 were current and former students, and one father of the students, one of the
A prominent
ringleaders.
attorney. A prominent attorney.
Yeah. So the main suppliers were Augusto Abatilio, and he was the one nicknamed Pablo Pledge-Escobar online, and then Thomas Robinson, whose father was the one involved. And his father was actually one who tried to hide evidence, and it was just drugs and money in a safe. But pretty much they had all of these guys in the frat, and the guys that wanted to join the frat, these pledges, cutting, running, packaging all this cocaine. They had trips from New York. They had trips to Philadelphia. They had like a full ring going. Like this is some straight up
Okay.
Have
Penn
you seen
State
Have you seen the
cartel.
Instagram meme? They show the workout, guys tossing weights to one
Yes,
another.
yes, it is. It's hilarious, but you kind of have to respect it. I mean, it's impressive. It's really
So
impressive.
how'd they get caught?
Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, and Snapchat. And they also had a lot of like police and investigators like in on the case by setting up drug deals
So
and
they-
stuff
so
because they
unlike-
controlled all of it. in
So
Penn State.
unlike our friends in the cartels, they didn't work with cash. They used
it was
Cash
yep,
apps and Venmo.
So-
and
so
that
the
digital
cartels
footprint.
We'll use a lot of that too, but they're much smarter about this. So what they'll do is hide it behind other transactions.
Right.
So in other words, I buy some tchotchke for $50.
Mhm.
It's a 50-cent tchotchke,
Right.
right? The cartels. I was when I was reading
I
this,
started
I started
laughing about these kids because I'm like,
oh my god, they were amateurs. No wonder all these cops were on to them.
But
They
they
must have
were-
been
but
laughing
they
the whole
still
time.
went 2+ years.
I mean, yeah, but they started it in school and they kept it going out of school.
What they did was keep it for 3 to 6 months before the police got onto it, and then 2 years for a deep dive investigation where they were going to take them all down. Literally, that's what we're dealing with here. This has been going on the last couple of years. These
Yeah.
guys have just been putting themselves deeper
What
and
were
deeper
they
into
doing
it.
with the money, by the way?
Were they buying things?
I
Were they
think
no-
they're really
Probably
just like funding the fraternity because one of them, the one that was kicked off, I can imagine they had to fund their
fraternity.
like because they weren't
like
like affiliated with Penn
affiliated
State
with Penn
anymore
State
when this was going on too.
Has there been
Has there been
any
any
numbers thrown out how much they've sold?
they've sold?
No,
No,
but there was
kilos.
lots of kilos.
There's more
There's
money
more-
than is showing up.
Oh,
The-
yeah.
the money
Yeah.
trail is going to be interesting because
Do
Yeah.
you think it's 7 digits?
easy.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's multiple 7
8
digits.
digits?
Yeah, maybe probably over 2.5 years. Yes.
I mean, they were making
So
out of
I
state
think there is
chops.
someone behind this, whether it's the dad or one of these kids or something, that was actually siphoning the cash out of this.
I think Abatillo was the mastermind behind this because he also had one of his pledge brothers that owed him money for giving him money for a spring break trip or something like that, and he owed him money. He had him like literally smuggling the drugs places to pay it off. So he had a good little assembly line.
Yeah, no,
going of
there
workers.
was a money person
So-
behind this who was
Yeah.
So what will they face if they get convicted? What are they looking at serving?
probably 5 to 10, but it'll get knocked down to 2.
They didn't include any hazing charges either for forcing the pledges to do it because the charges were so strong on like this is a drug related thing. They just kept it in that realm.
I
Too.
mean, what's interesting here is if if this was a black fraternity, they would all be walking with 6 months and slaps on the wrist. I mean, and I'm not running from saying that. A white fraternity there, they might actually get the heavier sentences.
Well, they should.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I mean, look, this is bad.
I don't
and-
believe
and
you
by
should
the
be
way-
giving these light sentences to anybody. who
And there's,
commits
by the
serious
way,
crime.
and they've indicted how many or charged how many?
13, well, 14 total. 13
So there's
students.
probably a couple hundred people they can charge on this.
Oh, yeah.
Easy, yeah.
There's so many people who could probably get away with it.
Well,
though,
and
too.
remember, they've got lines on buyers and it's other distribution networks off of this thing. So I mean, there's a lot there.
Well, all right.
join a
Well,
frat.
folks, go to school to learn.
and cut some kilos, I guess.
Cut some kilos.
Some
Is
kilos.
that Penn State's new motto?
That side job is not that side job.
It's like economics and chemistry.
Penn State gives us some good scandals.
The
Got to
one
respect it.
Yeah, they do. Breaking Battlegrounds coming back with more. No scandals.
Thanks for your help.
All right, who we got
Birthday.
just got the producer permissions.
Oh, Mirka de Llanos. Sam, I just think we go on with how socialism communism. You taking off?
Yeah.
Okay. See you later, hon. Bye.
Hi, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Happy
Oh,
birthday
happy
today.
birthday, yeah.
So how old today?
26.
So what are you doing for your birthday tonight?
Jans took me to Uchi in Scottsdale. So good.
Nice.
Uchi.
Never heard of it.
Amazing. And then we're going to the Henry for brunch.
Admittedly, not your kind of place, Chuck.
Isn't it?
No.
All
It's
right.
it's like nice because it's expensive, but like the portions are so small, so you have to order like a lot of things.
It's
So it's not the Golden Corral. All right. Happy birthday. I'll be on that call.
Cool.
okay. Here's the thing. Since we're admitting stuff to YouTube today,
Mhm.
the brownies at the Golden Corral are freaking delicious.
Never been there.
I've only been there like once, and this was maybe 10 years ago, so I don't know if they're actually still
So,
any good.
I
The
had
food was
not.
terrible, but the brownie was delicious.
So when I was in high school football, is our guest on yet? Oh, let's get him on. We'll talk about Golden Corral next break. Dear the intern's on the floor. He's not even got a chair. You can go sit in the chair over here, buddy. All right.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you okay. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Is there any? We want to talk about socialism. We got a little echo here. What's going on?
Do you hear me okay?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
Can't tell if it's coming where it's coming from. Hold on one second.
Just one
Chuck.
second. We got a little echo here. We're trying to figure out in the studio. Bear with us a minute, please. While we're doing that, is there any? We want to talk about socialism, communism. You've been a reporter down there. Is there any topics you want to start out with first, besides those topics?
No, whatever you want to ask me. I gave Aaron a little bit of a background. My parents were left
Yeah.
Cuba in the 60s, and I was always taught about it. So I just made a comment yesterday on a young DSA worker here in Florida whose parents fled communism. And I was like, I don't get it. How does that even happen? So, I mean, he hides it. He kind of,
Let's start off with that, because I was going to ask that question. So let's just start off with that when we talk. When we're ready. Are we ready, guys?
So I worked for NBC, Telemundo, and also for Univision, and done stuff, special projects for different networks. So just so that you know.
Let's get going.
Real quick before we do, how do you pronounce your name?
Mirka de Llanos.
Got it.
I can promise
Do the
you
best
he will
you
not.
can.
I can promise. Yes, I promise you he will not be as elegant as you are.
I can't roll R's for shit, but I'll get most of that.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
All right, here we go. Segment 4, 1450.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Mirka de Llanos, is an Emmy Award-winning journalist, published author, professor of journalism, public speaker, entrepreneur. Her family fled Cuba in communism, and that's what we brought her on here to talk about. So, Mirka, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, especially to speak on these topics that are so timely nowadays.
So you have in Miami a gentleman whose parents fled Cuba because of communism, and now he's working on campaigns and canvassing, going door to door promoting socialism. How does someone get to that point, realizing? I mean, I know plenty of Cubans. They share their stories. No one's being quiet in the house about it. How does he get to that point? What would you tell him if you had 30 minutes with him at lunch?
Well, I think that I'm sure his family has had this conversation with him. I think sometimes what happens is you get around other people, you start hearing the message. Maybe you feel like you don't have enough money, or maybe you're someone that's had a cushy life in a way because your family works so hard, and you feel like this is the cool thing to do nowadays, to just hang out with other young people that say radical things. So maybe that's the case. I don't know him personally. That's something you would have to ask him. But that's why I posted yesterday specifically just asking the question. And I got so many comments because this is something very emotional, especially for people that have fled communism, obviously. But I think that maybe the other day, Vice President Vance was speaking about the fact that if the economy is not fixed, in a way, that's the entrance point for a lot of young people to feed into the policy that, well, we don't have enough to eat, or it's not going well, and the Democratic Socialist Party is offering me all this free stuff. Now, we know how that ends. We know it doesn't work. We know it's a failed platform, but young people sometimes get brainwashed by these things, and they have no clue that they'll end up in poverty. I mean, what I'm surprised about is the fact that his own family doesn't even want to speak with their own name. They spoke only in anonymity. Why? Because I imagine that they're embarrassed about what this young man is doing.
One of the elements behind this, it seems to be like, we know all kids rebel, right? This seems to be in many ways a rebellion against a lot of successful parents whose kids aren't achieving the same things.
With real stories.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't theory. This is real stories they're coming from.
Exactly. And I think one of the things is that the way that they start, in a way, indoctrinating you, and this is because my mom and my dad taught me this since I was a very little girl. And just now, I just spoke about it with my mom, especially because I'm coming on here to be with you. And she was saying that they demonize people that do well in society. That's the beginning of it. So what happens is that all these people that maybe feel rejected, pushed aside, have not done so well, and they have families that have done very well, start thinking that these people are exploiting others in order to have their wealth. Now, that may be true in some cases, but in the majority of cases, people that amass wealth or that do well or that have entrepreneurial skills are because they've worked hard in society. They've given up time, they've studied, they've done what other people are not willing to do, and therefore they have a success that other people don't have. So if you can't just be jealous of people and then go ahead and say, poor me, and I need everything for free, that just doesn't work. Of course, at the beginning, this is what they want. All these DSA workers, all these DSA candidates, that's exactly what they want. They want to be able to give free stuff away. As a matter of fact, that's what they promise. That's now not how it ends up. If one thing we know for sure is that in socialism and communism, all the wealth, they say they want to spread the wealth, right? But they actually don't. The country ends up in poverty. The people end up in poverty. And the elite, which are the people of the party, are the ones that end up being able to eat what they want in the private planes, having all sorts of mansions and everything else. They are the ones that amass the wealth. So if anything, that regime and that type of ideology is the most unfair of all. And it's actually evil. If you ask someone like me, after I've seen everything that happened with my family, my mom has never seen her sister again because her sister had to raise her children and her sister couldn't come over here. And my mom was not going to go back to Cuba, especially when she came out in exile. And when you say that you are leaving a country because of the communist regime, my mom felt like she never wanted to go back because that regime was still in place. My father died and he never saw a free Cuba. So of course, I'm going to continue to speak about this because it's evil. It's completely evil. At this point, it's right and wrong. It's that big of a difference.
So that I appreciate you bringing it up. I don't think people realize what happens to these families when they escape Cuba and come to the United States because of communism and socialism. And everybody has a story like that, right? They're just, when they leave, they don't see family again. Am I wrong on that?
Well, there's people that after they get their citizenship, they have gone back to Cuba, and that's something that's debatable because there's two sides of the story and then two schools of thought, which one is that you shouldn't go back to Cuba because you are giving money to the regime. Now, that is 100% true. But I do have compassion for people that have elderly parents or children that they left behind. And once they are able to, they do try to go back and see their family members. So I understand it and I have compassion for that. But there are other people that have seen the evil of the regime and this is completely black and white for me. I am never going back unless there's a free Cuba and they stand on that principle.
Well, there's a third element to that, though, too. I've heard from some folks working in Florida that if you're in key industries, government or technology or these kind of things, you got to be really careful about going back there because the regime still has an interest in you.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you something, you cannot go to Cuba without them knowing exactly what you're doing 24/7. As a matter of fact, many years ago, when I worked for the local station, I first worked for the local station in Miami for Univision, and then I worked for the network. But when I worked for the local station, the Cuban government knows exactly what everyone's doing. They have tentacles all over the world. Now, we know this for a fact, and I'll tell you why, because I was 23 years old and I went to cover a story and I went to the Cuban interest section in Washington, D.C., which is what they had. Obviously, they cannot have an embassy. When I walked in there because I wanted to ask some questions, there was a guy at the top of the stairs that said to me, "What are you coming here to do, Mirka? You're coming to bomb us?" And I was like, "What? How do you know who I am?" He's like, "We know everything." So they were in Washington, D.C. I worked for a local station at that point in Miami, and they knew exactly who I was. Why? Because our station would speak out against the communist regime. They know exactly what's going on. So if you go to Cuba, if I go to Cuba tomorrow, they're going to know that I'm a journalist. They're going to know my stance because I'm public about it. And they're definitely going to follow me. So anybody that tells you that they do things freely when they go to Cuba and that the government has no hand in it is lying to you. So it just doesn't make sense.
What role does you worked at Univision, NBC, you've had a prominent career as a journalist. What role does Spanish speaking media in the United States play in this current debate on socialism and communism?
Well, that's a long answer. I'll try to answer it succinctly for you. I'll tell you that when I began in the local station, we were very much pro freedoms, pro US, because it was the local Miami station. I'll
Okay.
tell you when I went on to the network as time passed, I would say in the last 10 years, there's definitely a bent towards the left. And that's why I was pulled off the air at NBC Telemundo at the
Did they tell
end
you that?
of
Did they tell
last
you?
year.
Did they tell you? I mean, so I've had two former Telemundo anchors work for me, and one just said I quit because she was an anchor and she did a story, and they literally were changing the verbiage of it on the
Mhm.
teleprompter as she's doing it.
Absolutely.
They just said,
Absolutely.
they said, "I'm absolutely not doing this. You're not letting me be a reporter." Did they tell you that's why? Just like, no, we have a different editorial bent. How do they handle that with you?
Well, I'll tell you when it first started, I came on an opinion show, which I had never done before. You know, we're taught as journalists, you don't give your opinion, right? But television has changed and journalism has changed. So I said, well, I'm going to take an opportunity. I had guest hosted on The View many years back. And we weren't discussing politics at that point. That was when Barbara Walters was still on and she invited me on. So at this point, I come on this opinion show and I specifically told the producer, you know, I am conservative. I have Christian biblical values. Therefore, I'm 100% pro life. And I was explaining my stance on things. And he said, oh, absolutely. That's what we want. So they used my voice to promote the show and it brought in ratings. And later, when we went through the election year, and I was seeing, so I hosted much, the first block, which was news, the hard news, and they had some pop culture and other things on the show. But I would moderate that first part. And when I started seeing the way they were framing some of the stories, well, obviously, as an anchor, I'm able to go into the rundown and I'm able to write and put things in my own language, have always done this. At this point, what they started doing was limiting the fact that I could write my own scripts. Can you
Mm,
imagine that? So I
yeah.
went to my boss and I said, well, this isn't right. The way that this is written is incorrect. It's actually factually incorrect. You're actually lying to our audience. I cannot do that. He's like, well, you can fix it on air. I said, no, but I want to write the script correctly. So what I would do is give the facts, and then later we can speak about our opinions on these facts. I wanted to be very clear that I wanted to give the facts first and then have an opinion. What they started to do is they kicked me out of the rundown. They didn't let me write the scripts at all. And they would write things that were completely bent towards the left and against President Trump and against anybody that had any stance. So what I did was I would ad lib the scripts many times. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you something really simple that's outrageous to me. There was someone that was picked up by ICE, and he was accused of raping children. And I said, the pedophile did this and this and this. You know, I'm sorry. Sorry. My producer said to me in my ear, he's not a pedophile. He's only been accused of molesting children. I said, he raped children. It's already been announced that he is guilty of raping children. He is therefore a pedophile. She's like, no, you can't call him a pedophile. And I said, I will call him a pedophile. So it was things like that that started to boil up. And one time I just said, you know, all of you guys are bent towards the left, and you're actually pulling me off of being able to write scripts or have anything to do with the scripts because of the fact that everyone here is bent towards the left, and you're discriminating me. And because of that, I was sent to HR. I was pulled off the air for 10 days, et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually, in the middle of my contract, I was called in one morning and just said, that's it, you're done. You're not going to be with us anymore. And I said, well, why? They said, oh, we're going a different direction. And obviously, at this point, they don't have any conservative voices.
Last point before we let you go here, because this is something you keep hearing a lot from all of these pro-socialist, pro-communist kids. What's never been done before. Real socialism has never been done before. What's your answer to that as the last word?
That's not true. I mean, they have a narrative that they continue to spew out constantly, and just take a look at all the countries. If they say that, I also have people that comment all the time when I come out and speak and say, oh, socialism is not communism. Oh, give me a break. Of course it is. It is the gateway, and it leads to that. And by the way, there was, I think I'm gonna post on this in the next couple of days. There's a video where you can see Fidel Castro, and this is something my mom always told me. He always said, we are not communists. We are actually Christians, and they would wear crosses around their necks. So no, of course we are not communism. We want to help you. We want to help the people. We want the races to get along. They would pit the whites against the blacks. Can you imagine? Does it sound familiar to you? So
Yeah.
Exactly. So he always said he wasn't a communist. And once he was in power on January 1st, he said, and by the way, we are communists and there is no God. So they will lie to you straight to your face. Do not believe what they're saying. This is very important for people to know. We're not dealing, I feel like Americans in this country are very used, this is a noble country. And they're used, I know politicians can embellish,
but what they're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. So they are going to lie to you, and they're eventually going to say,
thank you so much, Mirka de Llanos. I really appreciate having you on the program. I probably butchered your name a little bit, but that's as close as I'm going to get. And I thank you very kindly. Every time you have something, bring it back. We love having you here. Breaking Battlegrounds.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have they had you on Claro y Directo?
Yes, I've been on there several times.
How do you like it?
Good. Those clips have gone viral.
Yeah, so I'm the one that started that. So
you did.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I'm the one that signs their paychecks. So I am glad you're liking it.
Yes. It's doing well, and anytime that they need me, I just come on and give color commentary or whatever they need. There's so many things to talk about. We could go on and on forever.
Well, we appreciate you. Well, we'll have you on soon. Thanks so much for your time today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye. All right. Our next guest is at 9:30. I sent you the article on this too. I don't know if you remember seeing it or not. That's how I found him.
Mm-hmm.
It was good.
Yeah.
I think I put on top. Isn't this the definition of deep state?
Pretty much.
I had a buddy wrote the book, Bo Swanson, who you have on next week, about his Great Souls of Men. He said, how do I get Tucker? I said, you're not going on Tucker, man. He's a Russian operative. He's anti-American. There's not a chance in hell I'm getting you on that show. He goes, what's he been doing? And then I realized this is a guy's author, owns a business. He has no clue what's going on with Tucker Carlson. I've had some comments lately. People just realized, man, I'm in a bubble because I'm the only one that seems to read anything.
Well, what's interesting is like Tucker has a bubble, right?
Yeah.
And it worries me because I used to be able to say very confidently that the right wasn't in a bubble, that we got everything.
Oh, no.
But now we're bubbled up.
Yeah. We're in a bubble. Totally. Everybody is. They become too tribal.
Yep.
Right. That's why it's important when you're in business, you have friends that aren't into politics. It's important if you have friends who just like sports,
Well, and sorry, just read something from outlets you don't like. Read a few things every day from outlets you don't like. Right. Like I hate the Arizona Republic, but I still have to read it. The Atlantic, the New York Times.
Seth and I were talking about that yesterday. I have a subscription to it.
Sure.
Sometimes they have, they have some, I like the long format stories they do on people.
Yeah, that stuff's great. I like that stuff.
They had a story 3 years ago I still think about. Homeless person they found passed away on Tatum, and they sort of went through his life and his kids. You and I have talked about these county-wide owned cemeteries for people who won't claim the bodies of relatives.
Potter's Fields.
That'd be a good story for you there, Jadir, at ASU. They have these Potter's Fields. They're all over. People won't claim the body. Just like my mom abandoned me 40 years ago. I don't really care. I'm not paying for it. It's really fascinating. It's sad, actually, is what it is.
Jack is on.
All right. We're ready.
Is it Cheever or Cheevers?
We'll ask him. Hey, Jack, how are you?
Good, Chuck. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, is it Cheever? How we pronounce your last name?
Cheevers with an S.
Cheevers with an S. Fantastic. Great. We want to talk about your book. I came across it when what's it? The magazine. I don't know. They did about the Kennedy's coup when you did it. And that was then I found it. It's the Airmail did the story with you. So that's how I found you. Immediately sent to our producer and said, you got to get Jack on the show. I want to talk about this. So appreciate you having you.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, let's rock and roll, gang.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Jack Cheevers, is the author of Active War, Lyndon Johnson, North Korea, and the Capture of the Spy Ship Pueblo. He has worked for the Los Angeles Times, Oakland Tribune, Associated Press, United Press International, and I am incredibly jealous because he lives on a pond in New Hampshire, which is about the most perfect life imaginable.
It leads one to writing and reading a lot. Is that what you do, Jack?
That's exactly what I do.
Jack, first question here. We have Jadir's in studio with us. He's an intern with us. He's going to the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at ASU. What would you tell him he needs to do to be a good journalist?
Be honest. Be honest in your writing. Be honest in the way you approach people. Present them the facts. Do it as objectively and as thoroughly as you can. Try to see all sides of the issue when you're writing about it. If you make a mistake, admit it quickly and publicly.
That's a big deal. And Jack, are you a big reader? Do you read just gobs to have knowledge of many things outside your lane?
Well, these days, Chuck, I read mostly research material for the next book. So, I mean, I read the papers in the morning. I love the news. I've been a news addict my entire life, some magazines, but, 90% of the time it's just research material.
That's fantastic. So the Vietnam War was 51 years ago, and I came across you in Airmail a couple weeks ago. It was back in July. And the title of their column was JFK's Final Failure, and it's based upon a book you wrote, Kennedy's Coup, a White House plot, a Saigon murder, and America's descent into Vietnam. Tell us about the book and why this moment was so important regarding the Vietnam War.
Well, the book is about the Kennedy administration's covert encouragement of a military coup against the president of South Vietnam, who was a longtime U.S. ally. This took place in 1963. And the upshot of the coup was that the president of South Vietnam, a man by the name of Ngo Dinh Diem, and his brother were brutally murdered. And the South Vietnamese government was essentially decapitated. And that had very bad consequences for our country as well as South Vietnam. it led to a lengthy period of political instability and turmoil in South Vietnam, bordering on chaos at times. Kennedy, of course, was assassinated in November of '63. Lyndon Johnson took over as president. Lyndon Johnson did not want to get involved in the Vietnam if he could possibly avoid it. But the Pentagon put a lot of pressure on him, Robert McNamara and the Joint Chiefs, to step up U.S. involvement in the war. And Johnson finally gave in to those recommendations. And in 1965, started sending in U.S. combat troops and bombing North Vietnam. That was really the initial period for the U.S. The big U.S. buildup in the war, which of course went on for years after that, and the consequences were very bad, as we all know.
Why did the Kennedy administration, encourage this coup? And basically, it doesn't even sound like it's Kennedy. It sounds like it's the middle managers. Why did they encourage a coup?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the U.S. in South Vietnam had been longtime allies. Kennedy and Diem. Kennedy had met Diem. He liked him. He admired him. When Kennedy was in the U.S. Senate in the 50s, he was very supportive of South Vietnam and South Vietnam getting independence from France. It had been a French colony for about 100 years. And when Diem requested U.S. aid in fighting the communist-led Viet Cong guerrilla army in 1961, Kennedy acceded to that and gave a large amount of U.S. military and economic aid to South Vietnam, including several thousand U.S. combat advisors. These weren't actual combat troops. These were guys who went into the field with the South Vietnamese army and advised them on how to pursue the Viet Cong. And by 1963, however, the situation was changing somewhat. Diem faced two big domestic problems. One was the war against the Viet Cong, which wasn't going particularly well despite the U.S. assistance. And the other was what was rapidly turning into a nationwide uprising by the Buddhist population of South Vietnam, which constituted about 70% of South Vietnam's people at the time. And he was a fairly authoritarian leader, and he basically cracked down on the Buddhists in what was often a very brutal way. And there were several incidents, very highly publicized incidents of him cracking down on the Buddhists. And over time, in the spring and summer and fall of 1963, he became a bigger and bigger political embarrassment to the Kennedy administration because President Kennedy was viewed as his chief supporter and his chief enabler in this country.
It seems like every time we hear about one of these situations, and you can kind of go around through U.S. history, CIA's involvement never ends up making it better. How different would all of this have been if it was directed out of the Pentagon and not Langley?
Well, it's very interesting because the CIA in this case, at its uppermost ranks, was actually opposed to the coup. John McCone was the CIA director at the time. He was very much opposed to the coup. He thought that Diem was doing a pretty good job. He was a good leader. He was winning the war. And he felt that if Diem were removed, there was no good replacement for him, nobody who was as strong and as experienced as Diem was. And he predicted quite presciently that the outcome of a coup would be a lengthy period of political instability, followed by a second coup, followed by more political instability, which would open the door to more and more military and political gains by the Viet Cong. That's pretty much what happened in the war. As I mentioned earlier, the Pentagon's position in 62, 63 was that Diem was losing the war and needed U.S. help. And by the time 65 rolled around and Johnson was president, the Pentagon was arguing basically that the U.S. needed to take over the war, which is pretty much what we did in the mid 60s.
Why? There's been a lot of histories and a lot written about the Vietnam War. Why did they cover this topic barely? They go over it fast. Why do you think that is? Because, all stories have a beginning. This is truly the beginning in a lot of ways of the Vietnam War. Why do you think they just gloss it over?
That's a really good question, Chuck. I'm not sure why that's the case. I think that, in certain books, they're very all-encompassing history, like Stanley Karnow's book, Vietnam, which of course was made into the PBS series. I mean, he does mention the coup and he goes into it for a couple of pages, but he's got a lot of ground to cover. I mean, he takes you way, way back in Vietnamese history and leads you all the way through the war years as well. There was one other book written that was pretty much focused exclusively on the coup that appeared about 40 years ago. Ellen Hammer's book, A Death in November, which was kind of a double entendre reference to the fact that Diem and Kennedy were both assassinated in November of 1963. But I really can't answer that question. My best guess is that most books are covering a longer period of Vietnamese history than mine does. Mine's focusing pretty much on this event and the consequences that followed it.
I'm always interested in this. On a show yesterday, we were talking about what's the background story of your favorite song, because most songs have a background story. What brought you to spend time by the pond and write this book?
I've always been interested in the origins of the war. I kind of grew up with the war. I was 9 years old when Kennedy was killed. And so the war was in the background all through.
By the way, do you remember when he was assassinated at 9? Do you remember it? Did it stick in your mind?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, where I was going. As I grew older in the 60s, I mean, the war was always in the background. It was on the network news every night. It was in the newspaper headlines every single day. It wasn't until I got to college that the last U.S. troops were withdrawn from South Vietnam in 1973 under President Nixon. So it was always there, and it was very traumatic for our country. I don't have to even say that to people. And I wondered, how did this thing get rolling? How did it develop? And, I started doing some reading. Our involvement really goes back to the end of World War II in the Truman administration. But I came across the coup, and it was a fascinating story. I mean, it involved all sorts of interesting characters, all sorts of interesting political dynamics and personal clashes between, American officials and Vietnamese officials and so forth. And I just thought this would make a hell of a good book. So I just decided to focus on the coup and the outcome of the coup.
We have a good friend who says every generation rebels. The 60s generation was the first that won. And that has had really dramatic consequences for the country ever since. It changed the culture, changed the direction of the country. As someone who grew up in the midst of that, how psychologically significant was the war for kids growing up in that period?
Well, I mean, I was fairly young. I was just a teenager as the war unfolded. But, by the time I reached high school, the war was very much present in people's lives. I grew up right outside Boston. Boston was a big hotbed of the anti-war movement. And, kids in our high school were starting to go. There were starting to be sit-ins, and the kids were starting to go to Boston Common to participate in the demonstrations and so forth. I was never really an activist in that sense. I was never really a joiner, but I was a careful observer, and it was very, very much present in the lives, my life, and the lives of my friends as a kid.
What could have been done differently? I mean, had this
say there's no assassination.
Say there's no assassination.
What happens?
Yeah. Obviously, that's speculative, but
yeah, it's very speculative, and you frankly can argue it both ways. I mean, let's say that Diem wasn't assassinated, there's an argument to be made that he would have tamped down the Buddhist rebellion, that he would have pulled together the Strategic Hamlet program, which wasn't great, but was out there. The infrastructure was laid down for it. That with more U.S. assistance and advice, he would have started fighting better against the Viet Cong. There's no question that he was a very strong leader, and maybe with some luck, with some good breaks, he could have prevailed against the Viet Cong. Who knows? It's also quite possible that Even if he hadn't died in the 1963 coup, somebody could have walked up to him at any point in time and shot him in the head, and that would be the end of him. So, I don't know. I mean, we only know what did happen. The coup just kind of blew the South Vietnamese government apart and ushered in this period of instability that I think was very frustrating to Lyndon Johnson. He wasn't quite sure how to pull the country together. He ordered his ambassador to do everything possible to unite all the factions in South Vietnam, get them behind the war, get them behind the new leadership, and that just didn't happen.
That's sort of an ongoing story throughout history, though, right? Is every time you have a strong leader in a country like this, we get involved, someone else gets involved. That person gets killed or taken out. They've already made sure there's no one there to replace them.
Seems like it. Folks,
Right.
we're with Jack Cheevers. He is the writer of a great new book, Kennedy's Coup, A White House Plot, A Saigon Murder, and America's Descent into Vietnam. If you DM us this weekend, first 5 DMs, we're going to send you a free copy of Jack's book. I think you'll love it. Sit down and follow Jack's example, sit by a pond and enjoy some outdoors and read it. Jack, is there anything else about the book that you think people should know about?
It's a long book. I'll be honest with you, Chuck. It's more than 600 pages, but I tried to write it in a very compelling way. I just tried to tell the story of how this whole thing unfolded. And as I mentioned earlier, it's full of very interesting characters, not just President Kennedy, but people in his administration, people in South Vietnam, people in the State Department, the CIA, the Army. I think it's something that will pull the reader right through it to the end. At least that's what some of the reviews on Amazon tell me. It's not for everybody. You will have to sit down and spend some time with it. But if you're interested in the war and how the war got underway, how we got involved in it, I think you'll find it worthwhile.
I often wonder, and you're a writer, I often wonder books of 600 pages, if you split them up in 3 volumes, if more people would read them. Because there's some, the enthusiasm of the succeeding reading 200 pages, then you get the next volume, right? It's I wonder when a publisher is going to try that. Last question for you, and we're going to let you go. And thank you so much for your time. As you did research on this book, what are the 1 or 2 big surprises for you doing your research about it? Which is like, oh my goodness, I had no idea.
I think the biggest surprise for me was the way President Kennedy handled this whole thing. This was not his finest hour. And I have to add that I'm a Democrat. I grew up in Massachusetts. The Kennedys were gods to us, especially when I was younger. But I was taken aback by his approach to this whole thing. He was very indecisive. He let other people run the show in some critical moments. Some people in his own administration, like John McCone, the CIA director, didn't really know if Kennedy was in favor of the coup or not, and yet he let it go forward. I don't think he understood or really grasped the idea of, if Diem is removed, who or what is going to replace them? Replace him. Is the replacement going to be any better than Diem at winning the war? Is the replacement going to be any better at instituting the democratic reforms that Washington had been pushing for years? Is anybody going to be better than Diem? I don't think that question was given a lot of thought. It's very interesting if you listen to the White House tapes of these discussions. And Kennedy was secretly taping these meetings in the Oval Office and in the cabinet room. You can actually listen to them through the Kennedy Library in Boston. And it's fascinating how superficial the discussion is. Kennedy focused over and over again on one question, which was, to the generals who overthrew Diem, did they have the military strength to do that before the coup happened? And he asked that question over and over again in these discussions. I think what was on his mind, he never says this explicitly, but I think what was on his mind was the Bay of Pigs debacle in 1961, when the CIA equipped and trained Cuban exiles tried to invade Cuba and overthrow Castro. That was a huge disaster and a very big political embarrassment for him very early on in his administration. And I think the last thing he wanted to do was have another Bay of Pigs on his hand in Saigon.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you. Look, the presidency is a huge job. It's just, I think sometimes people don't realize how big it really is. and it'd be interesting. I'm sure.
And there's no one who did it right in every instance. I mean, you
just
can
hard.
doesn't matter
So,
if it's Kennedy or Reagan or who your hero is, you can point to things they missed.
yeah. By the way, are you excited about the Red Sox, Jack? They're doing pretty well.
Always. Are you kidding? Do you even have to ask that question? Come on.
Well, you were in LA for a while, so I don't know. Loyalties
Wait.
change sometimes.
Hey, we got Roman
I'm
Anthony
back
coming
in New
next.
England
It's
now,
getting
baby.
better.
Jack Cheevers, thanks a lot, folks. He is the author of the book Kennedy's Coup, A White House Plot, A Saigon Murder, and America's Descent into Vietnam. DM us this weekend, the first 5 DMs. You get a free book of Jack, and read it and let us know what you think. Jack, thanks a million.
Thanks, Chuck. This was fun. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You
This
too.
is Breaking Battlegrounds. We'll be right back with Gary Gigi and Debt and Bond. We'll be right back. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Chuck. This was really funny. Great questions and a lively discussion.
That's great.
What's the next book you're working on?
The Bay of Pigs.
Oh, you got to call us.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We talked about Cuba the episode before you, so you got to get us on that. When's it going to be done?
Oh my God. We'll talk in 10 years.
Okay, so 10 years, you're going to do it. Tell them to do 3 volumes. I'm telling you, with the people's, ADD, ADHD now, this will help them. 3 volumes, 200 pages, 200 pages, 200 pages. I'm telling you, it will help.
Chuck, honest to God, it's a miracle to get a publisher to publish 1 volume on U.S. history these days. It's not easy, believe me.
Yeah, and don't get Sam and I started on that, because you'll have a tirade on us for a while on that. I'm very scared about that.
Yeah,
I'm very scared. So, all right, have a great day, my friend.
You take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't you think, though? 3 volumes? I mean, if you go and give it to Christmas, here's your first volume. Next Christmas, you get the second volume. Third Christmas, you get the 3rd volume.
I think he's got a point, and you got a point. I think that's how I would do it for my digitals in short volumes. But the book printer, they won't do it because it's the binding and the cover that.
Right. So Jadir, so we counted the other day between my homes in Utah here, I have 4,000 books. Okay. But you do get those thick books, and it's rare you finish them. I'll read 200, 300 pages, but I'll start skipping by chapters. Right. If you have a 200-page book, you do this when you travel on airports, pick up, it's like, it's about that size. All right, I'm going to read that book. If you get it like that, like, I can't take it anywhere, first of all. Right?
Well,
you're not hogging a book that thick, you're not hogging it around, right? Because this book sounds fascinating.
Right. But that's why I'm saying the digital version, right? Because I don't hump a book around anywhere anymore. I just bring my pad with me, right?
I do. Just ask Snooty on the plane, like, oh, you don't read books anymore?
The smell of books. Gary's on.
All right, let's get Gary on. All right.
You know what the best thing about the smell of books, the smell of old books?
Yeah.
So that actually can be a intoxicating thing because of the
No. All right, Gary, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, good. Let's talk national debt, $40 trillion. Bonds. I don't think people understand. I just see headlines, bonds, U.S. bonds. Let's talk about that and how it affects investors. Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Ready, Jeremy?
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up, Gary Gigi, is president of Gigi Capital. You've heard him here before, and obviously talking about debt, because that is, well, frankly, it's not talked about enough, Chuck or Gary. Our national debt, we're not getting serious. There's no indication, and it's getting worse.
Gary, so we have a $40 trillion national debt. It was announced this week. Now, I think, what do we owe ourselves? 13 billion of that. It's like we borrowed.
Yeah, it's like 9 trillion of that is.
So get rid of that. And then it's affecting the bond markets, right? So explain, folks, how they're connected and how this affects the value of their paycheck and what they should be doing as if they're looking to invest.
Yeah, so there's not a direct impact to their paycheck right now. There can and will be over time, but what higher borrowing costs, what all of this debt does is it takes money from other sources. For instance, people that buy bonds, large institutions, if they're buying government bonds. That means they're not funding private institutions as well, which means the private sector can't grow as fast, which means that corporations can't give wages nearly as fast as they normally would. That is a big deal to employers that are trying to give raises, but it impacts your purchasing power. And so we've talked about this before, how government is the creator of inflation. If government spends too much money, the Treasury creates money, then the Fed buys it. That is what creates inflation. So if your purchasing power is diminishing because the dollar is weakening, that is going to affect your ability to buy products. So indirectly, yes, it is going to affect your paycheck, but it isn't as if your next paycheck you're going to see a drop in whatever you receive. But over time, if the government's going to service this debt, then they may have to raise taxes or they may have to cut spending. So it is a serious, serious problem. I've been talking about this for a long time.
We talk a lot about this and about growing our way out of it, but we're reaching a point now where you can't grow your way out of it without very serious inflation. And so have we crossed that inflection point where 5% annual growth is no longer going to, over, let's say, a decade or 20 years, is no longer going to be enough to make a significant dent?
So, Sam, here's my take on this, which is that you can grow your way out of this, but government's not doing the things that they need in order to make that happen. And what I mean is they're not cutting spending. That is the
Right.
component that gets ignored constantly. Is if the Republicans cut tax rates, which will spur the economy, they regularly fail to cut spending at the same time. Democrats never cut spending. So Democrats will raise the tax rates on people, but they will never cut spending. And so Congress and administrations for at least the last 25 years have been kicking this down the road where they never cut spending. They always say that they're going to either raise taxes or grow their way out of it. Sam, I believe they can grow their way out of it, but they've got to cut spending in order to make that happen.
Would they have to cut spending, or could they, in other words, just maintain a baseline? And that's where we've argued in the past, is like, okay, if cuts are too tough, can you just not increase it anymore while you grow?
Well, that's a good starting point. I don't even see him getting to the point of just having status quo. Is that we run budget deficits, $1 trillion budget deficits every year, and have for probably a decade or longer. And so if they would keep, the budget as is and not deficit spending, certainly that's going to help. But they still have to cut spending, and nobody seems willing to do that. Someone has to talk about entitlements, and so at some point, not just the U.S., but every country has got to deal with their pensions, their entitlements, and I don't think that anyone intends to cut the entitlements of the people that are already on them. But we can talk and should be talking about changing the entitlements for Chuck and my children's ages, where they have decades and decades
Right.
to still be in the workforce, and if they were to change how Social Security is invested. We talked about this when George W. Bush was in office, but if we talked about investing the Social Security system, some of these entitlements for younger generations in the stock market, and let it grow, this could solve some of these entitlement problems. But right now, it's all invested in fixed income government bonds. Interest rates are low, and I don't see a solution to what they're doing with entitlements right now.
So it's funny. I had a very well-known, not conservative fiscal policy think tank email me yesterday morning and ask if Sam and I wanted to have someone on their show about the $40 trillion debt. And I wrote back, I said, sure, if they have a solution. They did not reply. And by the way, this person is very close to me, right? They did not reply. So I have asked various economic people, and this will be our final well, I want to talk about what people should be looking at for investments. But it just seems to me, because our economy is so big, it's 161 trillion value, okay, and we have a $40 trillion debt. So if you were loaning money, Gary, that's still a pretty good debt asset ratio, right? It seems to me what we just got to do is got to just start saying, we got to pass a balanced budget amendment. We had to pass a balanced budget every year. It seems like if you did that, interest rates. It seems like that interest rates drop 2 points within a year, and it changes everything. But you just got to say, okay, this is what we've done. We're going to fix entitlements. We're going to balance this every year. We're going to live within it. And if it did that, we are big enough that that solves the problem. We're not Paraguay, right? So we have this revenue, and people know that, and will only grow. Is that the right approach, do you think, personally?
I do think that's the right approach, Chuck, is balancing the budget, and doing that not just for 1 year, but doing that each year, dealing with entitlements, so that it does not affect those currently on them, but changing it so that later generations are going to be able to enjoy a better Social Security because it's invested differently. I do think, you guys, that 7-8 years from now, if something is not done, then Social Security is going to go bankrupt.
Right, which is no problem.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen because I think Congress is going to deal with it. But what I think they'll do is that if the Democrats are in power, instead of putting a cap on how much of your paycheck goes toward Social Security, they will say no cap. So if you're earning millions and millions of dollars, you're going to be taxed to Social Security forever. If Republicans are in charge, they're probably going to say something like, we're living longer. Instead of full retirement age of 67, it's now 70. Right. Or maybe they'll create a combination of the two.
Sam has a great thing. Sam has a great thing on that. You and I are at 70. If some blue collar guy, 65 still. If you're working your physical body every day, it's different from some schmucks like us all sitting.
I'll be fine working in an office at 70.
Yeah, and you'll want to.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, we all will. We'll all be talking at 75 years old saying, I got to go to work tomorrow, because that's who we are as people. But if you're some guy hauling steel or doing roofs all day.
You talk to these guys by the time they're 65, their bodies are trash.
Very quickly before we let you go. So with this debt in the bond market, what should investors be looking at right now? Where should they be putting their money monthly?
Yeah. So I think that as interest rates have moved higher, that means certain fixed income investments are going to become more attractive. So if you're a saver, CDs are going to have a higher rate. Treasury bills are going to have a higher rate. All of those things are going to have a higher rate. And you still need to have money in the stock market in order to keep up with inflation. So having a balance of those things is going to be super important.
Great. Gary Gigi, thanks a million for joining us. Folks, this is Breaking Battlegrounds. We hope you have a fantastic weekend. On behalf of Jeremy, Jadir the intern, Brennan, Sam, and myself, have a fantastic weekend. You can catch us wherever you get your podcasts or visit us at breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Obviously, 1.2 million of you have since January, and we appreciate that. Or you can